Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today what we're going to do is talk about this. This is a Wii U, or more specifically, a hacked Wii U. I want to be very clear about the intent of this video before we get started. This is not a video that's going to show you how to hack a Wii U. This is not a video that's going to show you like, dude, here's how you get the free Smash Bros. LOL, don't pay for anything. That's not what this is. This is a video about just a guy who got a Wii U that was hacked and wanted to see what you could do with it once it was hacked. This is more like the end result of having a hacked Wii U, just seeing what that scene is like if you've never explored it before, and just seeing the potential of it, as well as just a little bit of history of the console, history of this particular console as well, and just kind of some chit-chat time. So please get a drink, grab a sandwich, because I'm assuming this is going to take a little bit of time, and just relax. So, start off here. Obviously, yes, this is a Nintendo Wii U. Won't go too much into the history of this console because I know a lot of people already know it, but here's the elevator pitch version. Nintendo's first attempt at an 8th gen console. It launched in 2012. It flopped. Basically within 2 years, it was essentially dead. I mean, support for it was obvious to everybody. By the 4th year, it was really dead. Like, everybody knew, like, the Switch is coming, nobody cares about the Wii U anymore, and certainly Nintendo's successor, the Switch, launched in 2017. By the end of its run, the Nintendo Wii U only had about 200 physical games ever released for it worldwide. It was brief. Now, the ironic part about all of this is I loved this console. I thought I would hate it, but I actually loved it. During its run, because everyone was just purging the games, I was grabbing them all for like super cheap, and I ended up now I have a full Wii U set. That meant that I ran into a problem though, because I get the imports. Not only my collecting rules and everybody's rules are different, but mine are like, if I'm going for a full set, I want every single game in my region, plus the games that came out in other regions that we never got. In the case of Europe, they had 11. Now it's technically 13. And then Japan had like 20. So it's very attainable. So I was like, I'm going to grab those games, bring them here, have full set. Boom, there's my Wii U set. Problem is that Nintendo kept this console region locked. Despite it being super easy, like frustratingly easy to remove that, and we'll talk about that in a bit, they never did a firmware update to remove the region coding. So as a result, you can't import games. Which always annoyed me. But the thing was, in order to play them normally, I would have had to import a European Wii U or a Japanese Wii U just to be able to play those handful of games. And to be honest, that's really not worth it because there's only a handful of games of those handful of games that are even worth trying. like I said, there were, now it's 13, but there were 11 European exclusives. I would say like 2 or 3 are actually worth playing. Probably the best one being Project Zero, Maiden of Blackwater, which would be Fatal Frame 5, got a physical release over there. Japan had a couple that were worth playing that you actually could play without a knowledge of Japanese, but again, not worth buying an entire console over. So I thought, wouldn't it be neat if I could actually, just use them on my Wii U? But like I said, Nintendo never updated it to allow for that. So it was just kind of a pipe dream. Now, fast forward to like 2016, near the end of 2016, and the Wii U is like fire sale time. They're just getting rid of it because they know the Switch is around the corner. Nobody's really making Wii U games anymore. Just a handful of them are trickling out here and there. And Nintendo themselves decided to start purging their inventory. Now, I don't know exactly if these were just refurbished units or if they were just unsold stock or what it was, but they were just calling it Nintendo certified units. So you could go to their website back in like 2016 and buy a brand new Nintendo certified Wii U 32 gigabyte version, that's this one, for like $100. It would come with the gamepad, it would come with the console, it would come with all the cables and accessories, and even a copy of Nintendo Land. It was essentially a brand new Wii U, it just didn't come in the actual Wii U box, it just came in like in a white generic box. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna get a second one. I think I did show it at the time whenever it happened. And I was just like, I want to get a second one just in case, because I promise you Wii U's down the line are going to be really hard to find. They're not like Wii's, where they're everywhere. They're not even like GameCubes, where they were everywhere. I mean, it was only about 10 million of these things were ever sold worldwide. That's like Dreamcast numbers. Dreamcast don't show up a whole lot anymore in the wild. So I was like, and the Dreamcast didn't require this giant proprietary controller. At least not like well, okay, it was proprietary, but it wasn't like a special electronic device. Like, not only does your Wii U have to work, your gamepad has to work. So finding that combination in good shape Probably not a safe bet in the future, but for $100 brand new, coming straight from Nintendo, cool, got it. But it was really just a backup. There was no actual plan for it. Shortly after I got it, a buddy of mine named Jake, aka Zebular, he's one of the guys who runs the Missouri Game Con, awesome convention in St. Louis. I've been a guest there every year that it's existed anyway. He was talking to me and he's like, dude, I can hack the Wii U and maybe we can get the import games to work because that would be really cool. And I was like, sure, because I hadn't followed the hacking scene at all with this. And he was like, yeah, I'll take care of it. So I gave him the console, he did the hack, and he sent it back. And sure enough, the hack worked. And let me show you, I'm going to boot it up here. And what you're going to see is it'll look normal, and then you'll see this like weird looking BIOS screen that kind of looks like DOS. And then it goes past that. And then from there, it looks completely normal. There was a little text there with a bit of like a serial number. Now that actually corresponds to a Nintendo DS game. And that might sound strange. Back in the day, I'm assuming this method has changed, but back in the day, basically this is how the hack worked. Somebody figured out that on the eShop, I'll switch it there, the eShop, which we cannot go to, we'll talk about that in a bit. But if you went to the eShop, there were various Nintendo certified games you could download, some of which were actually free. And if you got them, you could actually use them as part of the exploit. So somebody figured out that you can basically trick the console into thinking the game is the hacked firmware. And so you can also tell the Wii U to always automatically start that game. So it thinks it's booting a game, but it's actually booting hacked firmware. And so what you're seeing is actually hacked firmware. Now, it may not look hacked or abnormal, but essentially that's what it is. A byproduct of that actually is that, I hate the way this works. You go all the way to the back here, and it creates there is actually a file inside that do not touch folder. It's what it thinks is the game. If you ever delete that, remove that, whatever, it'll brick your console. So as long as you know which version of that is, put it in a special folder, call it do not touch, and throw it all the way to the back. Never ever let that out. Never tinker with that. But as long as you leave that alone, your Wii U will work perfectly fine. That's all I really understood about that exploit. So he did that and he sent it back to me. Now he didn't have any import Wii U games, so he's like, I can't actually test to see if it worked, but you know, it's playing the American stuff. The hacked firmware seems to be booting. Good luck to you. Now, let's talk a little bit about the hacked firmware before we get into the region specifics. The hacked firmware, instead of running 5.2.2, it now runs something called 99.99.99. That's how you know the hacked work, I guess. It also intentionally blocks out Nintendo's servers, so it is unable to connect there to get updates or be scanned by Nintendo or blocked or anything. Even though, as you can see, I do have it connected right now. There's a hardline connection happening here, and there is a reason for that. The Homebrew channel right here is the one thing that can still use the internet connection, and that thing is cool because, you know, it can self-update and all this stuff. But anyway, that's why it still has internet connectivity. But yeah, Nintendo can't see the console, so they can't do anything about it, I guess is a way to put it. But, okay, I get the console, I'm ready to go, and I put in, I think the disc I put in actually was, the first one I put in was a Japanese game. It was this. It was the Yakuza 1 and 2 HD collection for Wii U. This only came out in Japan. I don't know why, we never got this, but we didn't. That's probably because Yakuza wasn't a big hit in the West yet when this was made. And I always thought it'd be cool because this is, at the time, there was no Yakuza Kiwami 1 or 2. So this was like the best way to play the two first Yakuza games. You just couldn't because it was region locked. Put it in, didn't work. I stuck in a PAL game. I think I put in Project Zero, Made in Blackwater. That one didn't work either. And I was just like, ugh. Okay. So then I put it in an American game, and that did work. And, you know, so I was like, okay, so the disk drive isn't dead. It's just the region coding didn't shut off. So I messaged him, and he's like, yeah, there's some region coding software in there. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went into the Homebrew channel, and I found it. I turned it on, and it did nothing. Now, it turns out that software has a purpose, and we'll talk about that later. But basically where this left me was, okay, it can't actually play the imports. That never changed. Now I can't connect it online, so games like Super Mario Maker, I can't play anymore because I can't, you know, download maps. Anything that was online dependent, like Splatoon or whatever, can't play that. So I kind of felt like, well, that was a waste of time because there was nothing I could do with it. Back in whatever it was, 2017, 2018, whenever this originally happened. So I just kind of put it on mothballs. I shut it down, put it in a, not in a closet, but I put it away, and I was just like, all right, I'll deal with this later, I guess. Now, if you saw my Xbox 360 modded video, you'll know that kind of a busy guy for the last couple years, hadn't really had much time to tinker with stuff, so I just didn't. But now with all this lockdown stuff, plenty of time to tinker with things. Right after I finished the Xbox 360 video, or the project, let's call it that, I started thinking about it. I was like, I still have that Wii U. I wonder what I could do with that. And the first thing that dawned on me was I was like, you know what? If you guys don't know this about me, I know a lot of you do, but if you don't, I'm a bit paranoid when it comes to my disc-based games. Ever since 2014, I've been taking every single disc-based game I own and ripping them to a computer. Now, the obvious response to that for most people is like, why? And the simple answer is to verify the data. See, if you have a used disc video game, it might look fine or may have a couple scratches, but it plays fine or whatever. That could be true, but the truth is, unless you rip it to a computer, you don't actually know that. You might boot it into a console, it might even start playing for a bit, but unless it can actually verify every single sector of data, it can't actually guarantee to work the whole way through. If you rip it to a computer, you know there's nothing wrong with the disc. So in 2014, with heightened fears about disc rot and all this sort of stuff, I just started gradually going through every single disc-based console I had and ripping everything to a computer one way or another. Some consoles are easier than others. I've been thinking about making a video specifically addressing this. We'll see. You guys let me know if that would be interesting to you. But by the end of all of this, the only two consoles I couldn't do was the Xbox One and the Wii U. The Xbox One's not that big of a deal because it installs its games directly from the console to either the internal hard drive or an external hard drive. Essentially, it's facilitating the same function. You just don't have access to that data. And it's kind of funny because I did all that stuff well before like ODEs and all this sort of stuff were coming on the market. So it has had the benefit now of like, oh, I got that modded GameCube. Cool. Well, I already ripped all my own games. I'll just throw them on there. Project done. Very easy. So save myself a lot of time. But anyway, so I was like, okay, I can't do that with the Xbox One, but I do have that hacked Wii U. And I would really like to be able to rip my Wii U games because I have a full set, and the problem with the Wii U is it is the last disc-based console that actually directly reads its games off of the disc. The PS4, the Xbox One, the PS5, Xbox Series X, they have discs, but those discs, the games don't play off of them. All that happens is you put them in and the console installs the data from that to a hard drive. Then what you're doing is you're playing the games off of a hard drive and it's just using the disc as like an unlock key. But the Wii U and consoles before it, you always played the games directly off of the disc. Sometimes the 360, you could do that voluntarily. You could do it either way. And the PS3 was like a weird combination of the two. But yet, this is the last time that was ever the case. So I was like, I really want to be sure there's nothing wrong with my discs because that's the way you play the games. So I figured there had to be some sort of update to the Wii U scene in the last few years, and sure enough, there was. So I'm going to show you the Homebrew Launcher. Boot this up here. Now, unfortunately, because of the way the Wii U works, what I see on the gamepad will not be what you see on this screen. So I'm going to try to do my best to explain this. In some cases, it will be identical. But this is the Wii U homebrew store or whatever it is. Now, when I turned it on and I connected everything to the internet, it kind of freaked out. I was like, whoa, dude, you haven't been on... This is way out of date. So it went ahead and updated everything. It was actually relatively painless. It updates things, reboots, whatever. And then finally, I'm left with this app store and all this sort of other stuff with these various apps that perform various functions. And so I was like, okay, cool. There's a thing called disk to app. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It rips disks to the console. Now, the console only allows you, at least the way that software works, it rips it to two possible destinations. I'm going to save you a lot of the details because it's not really important for this video, but it had two choices. It was either rip the games to a hard drive or rip it to an SD card through the SD card port there. Hard drive might sound like the instinctive option, but if your goal is to archive them, it's not the right option because a Wii U has to format a hard drive before it can use it. Thus, if you rip them to the hard drive, you can't actually use that hard drive on a computer, thus defeating the purpose of what I was trying to do. So I have to use the SD card method. SD card's a problem because I'm using like a 64 gigabyte SD card. A Wii U disc can be potentially 23 gigabytes. Now, I never ran into one that big. I think the biggest one was like 21 gigs. And on average, I'd say it was like 5 to 8 gigs. it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to bother you with all the details of this, but it took a really long time because the data read speed is really bad on this. Like, we're talking sometimes it's as slow as 2 gigabytes an hour. So, like, in an average day where I just get up in the morning, I have this whole setup like done just like I do right now, pop in a disc, walk away, do my business, come back, whatever. A whole full day of that, maybe 10 to 15 games. Like, it takes a really long time. And before you're like, that seems like overkill, why not just download them? Once again, I want to make this very clear. My goal is not to pirate anything. I don't want to download anything. What I wanted to do was back up my collection, back up my discs, and make sure my discs work. And while that would seem like overkill to a lot of people, our goals are different. And I'm glad I did that too, because there was actually one game in the collection that was defective, and it was Fist of the North Star Ken's Rage 2, which was a Japanese exclusive, which tells you a lot about the potential reason to do this. That game was a Japanese exclusive. I bought it brand new, yet I obviously never played it because I couldn't. It wouldn't do anything. So I never even put it into the console. It sat in the case for years, and it was the one disc in the collection I couldn't rip. It would always get to about 90% and then fail. So I was like, oh, good. I had to replace that one, which was kind of annoying, but every other disc I got through. But yeah, so I was able to archive all my Wii U stuff, and I was all set to go. So I thought, okay, it's weird though, because it can read it can read the imports doing that, but it can't actually play them. I thought, that's really strange. There's got to be a way around this. So I looked through that app store trying to find region-free software, and there's nothing like that. And I was like, this is just really bizarre. And I'm kind of venting about this to one of the guys in my Discord. His name's Caleb, or Sea-Dog. And he's just like, oh, there's this other region-free exploit you can do. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. So you'll see this thing right here on the bottom called FTP EU Everywhere or whatever. It's special software that basically allows the Wii U to connect to a computer through an FTP system. Then you run software on your computer, just FTP software, and essentially at that point, if you know anything about networking, you're more or less treating the Wii U like an extension of your computer, like it's an external hard drive almost. And you basically can communicate with it. So I followed this video guide that exists, which you can go find. It did a much better job of explaining this than I'm going to, but basically, to water it all down, if you go into the system memory through that process, there's a simple little text file somewhere. You open up that text file, and inside of it, I'm talking about open it up. You don't even have to take it off the Wii U. You just open it, like directly through the Wii U onto your computer screen. And it'll just have a bunch of text and a bunch of numbers and letters, like stuff, basically garbage to the human eye. But there's this one section in particular that has a number. It'll either be a number 1, a number 2, or a number 4. And that determines what region the system is. It's either, I don't remember which number is which, but let's just say 1 is Japanese, 2 is European, 4 is American. If you delete that number and replace it with the number 119, and then save the file, reboot the Wii U, congratulations, your Wii U is now region-free. That's all it takes. So don't tell me Nintendo couldn't have done it. It's a hex edit. They could have done it like that. Done. Problem solved. And you would have had a region-free Wii U. So that really pissed me off. I mean, it was easy. I'm happy it was easy, but it pissed me off that Nintendo never actually did it. So after that, the console became completely region-free, and let me just go ahead and show you that real quick here. We're going to pop in, I think this was the first import I ever got for it was Yakuza, so so you can remember which direction these go from this angle. But yeah, pop that in there, and we'll pop it over there so you guys can see. Yakuza will display there in a second, and then of course the game would, yep, see, Yakuza 1 and 2 HD. Let me go ahead and launch it. No problem. Yeah, Yakuza 1 and 2 HD. So it works perfectly fine. It's now region-free, which is great. I was able to back up all my discs. So at that point, I was kind of like, okay, I guess I'm done with this. But then I thought, you know, there's got to be more you can do with it. And the obvious thing you can do with it is, well, I ripped all my own discs. I know the Wii U can take a hard drive. Can I have it run games off of a hard drive like I did with the hacked Xbox 360? Think EverDrive logic. It's not an EverDrive, obviously, but think that logic. Like, can I have all my games in one concentrated place for this particular console? And the answer is, yes, you can. And that's exactly what I did. Right here is a hard drive. This is a 1.5 terabyte USB 3.0 drive. Not that big, right? The Wii U can have a maximum storage capacity of 2 terabytes external. But I'm going to tell you right now, as somebody who ripped the entire library, it doesn't take anywhere near that much. It takes just a little over a terabyte. So a 1 terabyte drive won't cut it, but I had this 1.5 terabyte hard drive laying around. I'm like, that's perfect because I don't need the extra space. So I did the process of installing it. Now that is truly an irritating time, is installing the games. It's a little like PlayStation 3. If you take the PlayStation 3, you remember you could download games off of PSN or whatever, and then you would have this file, and then you'd have to install the file. It's exactly the same with a hacked Wii U. Let's just say, for example, I took Yakuza there, and I installed it onto the SD card. I ripped the data. I'm like, cool, now I want to play it. Well, you can't do it off the SD card. And you're like, oh, okay, well, what if I just rip it directly to the hard drive? Doesn't work either. You have to install it, and there's actually separate software for that purpose in the Homebrew Launcher. Let me go ahead and show it to you real quick. Where what it does is it goes inside the SD card and it looks for any Wii U compatible installs and then just goes ahead and proceeds with it. No, we're not. That was an accident. I mean to click that. It's called this one, the WUP installer, GX2 or whatever it is. Yeah, great software, but all I'm really saying with this is it was a pain. Because let's say, for example, I was like, all right, man, these are the 3 Wii U games I'm going to rip. I'll rip every single one of these to this SD card, but every single one of them is not going to rip to what their name is. It's going to rip to like a serial number. And good old Metal Gear Solid told us the answer to how to solve this problem of which is which. Look at the back of the package. Every single Wii U game has a serial number at the bottom that starts with WUP and a dash. That serial number is always associated with whatever file structure it creates. All you have to do is rename them manually, but you also have to rename them in such a way where they don't use special characters. Like Japanese characters typically don't work, or sometimes like plus symbols and commas and pound symbols. A lot of that stuff confuses it, so you have to just go with base, English, if you will, or base Romantic characters. And then you should generally be fine, because if you have one with an odd file or with an odd character that it doesn't understand, it will simply not show up in that list, which I wish I could illustrate for you, but it's only displayable on the gamepad, so there's no point. Well, I guess I can kind of try to show you that. I have one example preloaded in there. Yeah, I realize that's not the best angle, but I'll show it to you. I'll do a close-up of it. But yeah, so you can see there that it has a file name. Now, personally, what I would have done, let's just say I had ripped that game, I would have taken it over to the computer after shutting down the Wii U, and I would have renamed WUPPAVEE to, in this case, it would have been Axiom Verge, which happens to be the smallest physical game on the Wii U, at least the American set, anyway. And then I would know exactly what it is. And then you just kind of do a green check mark thing, and you tell it to install, and then you tell it where to install. It can take a while depending on the game, but it's really not that big of a deal. It's just tedious. It's very tedious. And the other problem I ran into is like, okay, so I got all these Wii U games, and I want to install them to my console. Cool, I own them. It's not illegal. I'm just backing up my own property. There is a problem you run into, though, which is because it's not able to connect to the internet anymore, how do I get the patches? Because a lot of the games have patches. And there is a solution for this done by the community. It's called Wii U USB Transfer. It's software you download on your PC and you just run it, and you have like full access to the Wii U archives. Now, I'm just going to keep it real with you. Yes, you can download games in there. I didn't do that. Like I said, I actually own the games. But one thing it also has is all the, or at least almost all, the patches available for these games. Now, the way I see it, I guess it's a gray area, but the way I see it is the patch is freeware because you own the game, you would have got the patch anyway. I'm just not able to physically connect to it. And in a few years, when Nintendo shuts down the Wii U servers, that's exactly will be the same case anyway. So, yeah, it makes sense. Now, you can also get the DLC there. That's different. That is piracy because you didn't, unless you paid for it in a different form or whatever. Then, yeah, that's piracy. So, that's up to you. I'm just explaining that it is possible to get the patches. So here's, long story short, I took every single Wii U game and I went through and checked every single one to see which one had patches. I acquired every single patch for said game, and then after tediously installing one at a time, because you have to basically go from here, send it back to your computer, archive it, send it back here, and install it. Like, it just takes forever. After doing all of that, I eventually got the entire library of Wii U games onto this console. And they all run. There's a couple quirks in some cases. There are some Japanese games that don't work at all because they require an internet connection. Like, let me see if I can show you one here. No, I can't. That's right, because of the way the screen works. But like Dragon Quest X and whatever the what was the other, Monster Hunter. Those don't work because they require an online connection, so it'll just say like, I can't play this. Some games will be gimped because of it. Games like Splatoon or Super Mario Maker won't work as well because, I mean, they'll run, but they won't work as well. The only game I ran into like a problem where I was a little surprised was Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight, so every game, I don't know how the Wii U knows this, especially when it's not connected to the internet, but the Wii U knows if you have the latest firmware patch or not, regardless if it's connected to the internet. I don't know how it knows that, but it knows. So if I didn't have a patch, the game, like if I attempted to boot up a game that has a patch that I didn't install, it would present me with this screen that was like, hey, checking, preparing update, and then it would say like, hey, I can't connect to the internet to get the patch. Do you want to try playing anyway? And so if it ever says that, you either don't have the patch or you have an out-of-date patch. After installing all the patches, every single game works smoothly except Shovel Knight. I would put on the patch and it would still say that. And so it turns out I simply don't have the final patch for Shovel Knight. I have a patch, just not the last one. I don't know what the final one does. I'm guessing it's more like amiibo support or something like that. But other than that, I had all the patches and I got everything working. So that was cool. And after that, I got all the American games to work, no problem. I got all the European games to work, no problem. And almost all the Japanese games. There was only one that would crash and not work. And it was an interesting example. So let me try and show it to you here. The game is Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, which I can't actually boot for reasons just explained. Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, like who cares? It's Skylanders, whatever. You know, the Toys to Life stuff. Funny thing about that game is it's the single rarest game on the Wii U. I know, right? Why would it be a Skylanders game? Those things were dumpster trash. Like, who cares? It's redundant. But you get it. They were worthless. That game only got a physical edition in Japan, and it wasn't even sold at retail. It was at, like, a convention as an exclusive. I have a copy of it, but, like, why? So as a result, it's, like, borderline impossible to find that game. But that was the only game I couldn't get to boot, and then I eventually figured out why. This circles all the way back to the beginning. I told you that Jake put on some region software that we thought would solve the problem. Turns out that software, that's not what it does. That software's purpose is to trick the console into thinking it's a different region, even though it doesn't shut off the region locks. So sometimes a game will expect to be in one region's console as opposed to another, and if you get past the security lock, there's still this secondary procedure to be like, well, yes, you now have a region-free console, but I'm still not going to play it because I'm looking for a Japanese console and I can tell that's an American one, so it won't work. As far as I can tell, Skylanders Spyro's Adventure was the only game to actually use that. So there's some custom software here. I'll see if I can show it to you. And if you run this, it basically just gives you the option to let the console think it's in a different mode. It's called Speak, S-P-I-I-K. So if you boot this up, you'll get this little DOS-looking screen. Now, right now, it's a European. I think whoever made it was European, so they just set it to EUR by default. But basically, from here, you can change the language and you can change the region expectation. It's not the region coding, the region expectation. Now you can quit out of it, obviously, or you can switch it to a different language. So in this case, if I switch it to JAP for Japanese, the console now thinks it's a Japanese console, even though that has nothing to do with the region locks. So I press A to confirm that. And if I do that, as far as the file structure is concerned, it now thinks, okay, expect Japanese games. And if that's the case, I am then able to run Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. It is the only game I had this problem with. The only one. See, now it is booting. Before, it would just get to the title screen, that first white one, and just crash after that. The console would just shut down. But with that fix, the game works. Now, I still don't have like the USB thing connected. I don't have the toys connected, so I can't actually play the game, ironically. But I tested every single Wii U game with the expectation of it being an American console, and every single one worked except for that, or the games that have to connect online, but that's a different situation entirely. So, hey, if you're into the Super Wii U set and you're like, why doesn't Spyro work? That's why. That's the one game where I had that problem. So let's talk about a couple other pieces of advice here. When it comes to the hard drive, as I said, you can get a 1.5 terabyte if your goal is to just have Wii U games. Keep in mind that the Wii U had some engineering quirks. Nintendo put 4 USB ports on these things. However, they're USB 2.0 ports, so they don't have a whole lot of speed in them. And on top of that, my understanding is the rear 2 ports share the same bus, and the front 2 ports share the same bus, which basically means you should never attempt to have 2 hard drives in the front and 2 hard drives in the back, or whatever. If you have like 1 hard drive in the back or 1 flash drive in the back, the other one you try to connect should be in the front. You should never try to do this 2 at the same time, but that's a different problem we'll get back to in a second. The other problem is they don't provide enough power to run a hard drive. So it's generally recommended to have a hard drive with its own separate external power supply. If you don't want to do that, you can use one of these little portable drives that's self-powered, but you'll need this. This is a USB-Y cable. Basically, this provides not only one end provides data and the other end provides power, and it just gives it enough extra juice to actually work. But of course, that'll cannibalize 2 of your USB ports, which is not really that big of a deal, to be real with you, because here's the other thing. The Wii U can only support 1 hard drive or 1 flash drive at a time anyway. If you connect 2, what's going to happen is it's going to take you to the settings of the console, the storage settings. Like, it will not give you any other choice. It will just take you to that. That's it. That's all you get to do. And it'll be like, all right, I'll let you in here to transfer data from this to another hard drive or back, but you can only actually run 1. And the maximum size you can have out of it is 2 terabytes. So that's just some food for thought if you're thinking about doing this. So in the end, it depends on your goals. My goal was to have a Wii U where my entire Wii U library was fully backed up onto a hard drive, and now I can play all of the games off of this. I can leave my collection alone. I validated the discs. I know they all work. And then you do get some benefits. Not only do you get the convenience thing out of it, but you also get things like better load times and that sort of stuff. Although, to be honest, that is kind of minor with this. It's better, but it's not like a giant improvement, but it is better. I just wanted to take a second here to kind of show you how I have it laid out. So this is a personal method of organization for me. I just have the American games all broken up into different folders because each folder has a limit to how many games you can have. I think it's like 84 games per folder. I also organize the European stuff and the Japanese stuff separately, so you can see each of those. And you just see like that I have all the games in there. Now you have to manually alphabetize them, which I did by just dragging them around and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, you can see they're all installed there. And just taking a look through every single one of these folders, there's just, it's not actually a lot of games. When you think about it, what you're seeing is every single Wii U game that was ever released, at least physically. Obviously, there are more digital games. I don't have those. But yeah, they are there. And the thing is, another pro tip for you, when you're installing all these, after you install them, they'll show up on the dashboard. It's best to throw them in a folder, but reboot your console before you try to run them. If you try to just run them right after the install, they usually crash. So it's best to do a full clean reboot. But let me fire up an example of a game here so you guys can get a sense of it. Just very easy. Just kind of click on whatever. So we'll run with Mario Kart 8. And yeah, it takes a little bit less time to load the game entirely. It's faster than off the disc. But, again, the load times are not going to be like super wow impressive. It's just kind of the absolute best the Wii U can do, which is nothing really to write home about, but it is better than the performance off of the disc. And again, you are preserving your collection that way. And of course, it is convenient. So you can get that. Now, the other thing that I didn't explore at all, but I do want to give a mention to it because if I don't, people will lose their minds. As you can see, obviously, the Wii U supported Wii stuff. Now, a hacked Wii U can also have a hacked Wii menu. And so, therefore, you can have all the benefits of a hacked Wii, which would include not only the ability to play backup Wii games, import Wii games, all that stuff, but also GameCube support digitally. You can't stick a GameCube disc in this. But you could also have access to all the emulators and stuff that a Wii does. So potentially, depending on your motives, you could have like the ultimate emulator box console here. But to keep it real with you, I don't care about the emulator side of things because like I have all the legit hardware. If I want to play it, I would do that. When it comes to the GameCube, I've shown it to you before. I have like that super modified GameCube. That's my way to roll. And when it comes to the Wii, couldn't care less. Like there's a handful of games on the Wii ever that I would ever go back to play. And I have them physically. I could put them on a stock unit. I could put them on this unit and just play right off the disc if I really wanted to. Like it's the Wii. To me, I just don't care. I know that's not. I know a lot of people love that thing for different reasons. I don't understand why, but if it's fine. But if you like it, that's cool. But I'm not on that team. But my point is, I'm just saying, depending on your goals, you could hack this thing to play 3 different generations of Nintendo stuff right out of the gate, plus all the emulator stuff. But like I said, the bottleneck there is 2 terabyte SD or a hard drive maximum. That's it. That's all you can have as storage. So you either have to have multiple hard drives, which I don't actually recommend, you know, where you would take one out and plug in the next one every time, depending on which one you wanted to use. Don't recommend that because the Wii U kind of throws a temper tantrum when it doesn't detect the same storage device booted up. And it kind of warns against doing that. And the alternative would be to just be very selective about which games you want, which I get the feeling is what more people would prefer to do anyway. They're like, I don't need the stupid Japanese exclusive Spyro Skylanders game. I don't care. That takes up space. Why would I do that when I could have Mario Galaxy on there? Completely valid argument, and that's your choice. I'm simply explaining the bottlenecks. How you use that information is entirely up to you. So I think that's kind of probably about it. I mean, I can't really think of much else that I did to it. I did use this gamepad, which was from my first Wii U. The reason I chose this one is, this goes back years, like 6 years ago. I did a video where I had upgraded the battery in this thing using the official Wii U expanded battery. It has like 9 hours of battery life instead of like 3 or whatever it was. It was only released in like Europe. I bought one over there, put it in here, works perfectly fine. So then I just synced it with this console. So my gamepad stays on for far longer. But yeah, it's really nice in the end result. If you like the Wii U, it's great because it just consolidates everything into one convenient option. So all my games are on there. The only other thing I could do to enhance this any further, and it would be a minor upgrade and is totally not worth it, would be if I decided to stick a 2 terabyte SSD on it. They don't make 1.5 terabyte SSDs, so that wouldn't work. And a 1 terabyte SSD would be too small. But the thing is, the amount of performance enhancement you get out of that is like comically small because it's USB 2.0 and it's not going to really take advantage of much. All you get out of it is the fact that the drive never has to spin up and that the data retrieval method is instantaneous as opposed to having to find it on the disk somewhere on the hard drive. That can take additional time, but it's like we're talking incremental improvement. And maybe one day if 2 terabyte SSD is like pennies, sure. But beyond that, I'm not going to bother. But yeah, so there you go. Hopefully this was informative. If you're interested in getting a hacked Wii U, well, you have to get a Wii U first, obviously. And then there's a bunch of guides online on how to actually do it. Like I said, I didn't do this, and the method that was done is now out of date. So there's probably better, easier methods now that use like some sort of SD card exploit or something like that. I don't know. But look into it if you're interested at all. If you're into the Wii U, it's a great way to preserve your collection while still have access to the games. So there you go. Hopefully you guys like this video. If you could please like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I appreciate it. Check out the social medias. Hit me up in the Discord. Very active in there these days. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. Appreciate it. Patreon if you want to. Always appreciate you. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all later.